Hey ladies and gentlemen, Stephen here from Redolessence and welcome back to another video. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it and I hope that this video finds you well. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a closer look at a fragrance by the company Richmond, and this fragrance is called Rich Mess, so make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin this video and I tell you all about Rich Mess by Richmond and I give you my thoughts on the smell, the performance, the note breakdown, so on and so forth, I do want to mention that if you are a fan of fragrance-related content, if you like fragrance reviews here on YouTube, but also top 10 videos, giveaways, unboxings, special guests, interviews, and pretty much anything having to do with fragrances, please do consider supporting this channel by subscribing to it. I would really appreciate that. All you have to do is click on that red button in the corner. And of course, while you're at it, please make sure to enable notifications by clicking on the bell icon. This way, whenever I do put out these videos, they will get delivered straight to your feed. You never need to worry about missing any of my future uploads. So this fragrance was released in 2018, so it has been around for a couple of years now. The perfumer for this fragrance is Christophe Laudermiel, and Christophe Laudermiel is one of the most talented perfumers I've ever had the pleasure of meeting in person. I actually met him in person in New York, and he was giving a master class. He's responsible for creations like Amber Absolute by Tom Ford, Abercrombie & Fitch's Fierce, as well as many other fragrances. A very quick look up on Fragrantica will give you all of the information that you need. Now, this particular brand and fragrance is based out of New York, and Richmond has a lot of expertise dealing with some of the world's leading luxury and perfume brands, and this fragrance in particular is a leather-dominant fragrance, but it's spicy and fruity as well. So you have fig, you have grapefruit, you have a little bit of saffron, you have some other spices thrown into the mix, a little bit of lily, if I'm not mistaken, and a base of Atlas cedarwood. I'm excited to give you my thoughts on the smell, but let's start things off with the presentation. So here's the presentation for the bottle. I do want to apologize, it actually came in a pouch and I seem to have misplaced the pouch, but here's the actual bottle. You can tell the coloration of the liquid on the inside is really dark, and I think that sort of gives away the smell of this fragrance a little bit, but here's the label on the front, just has the name of the fragrance and the name of the company. The cap for this fragrance does click into place very securely. You can pick it up from the cap. And the distribution on the atomizer is very wide. Let's continue with the smell. So as soon as this fragrance opens up, you are going to get a hint of fruit in the opening, and that's coming mostly from the fig. Now, fig is a fantasy note in perfumery, which basically means that they don't use real fig in perfume, so it relies on a combination of other notes brought together to create that accord. But I can definitely pick up on a little bit of fig in the opening. Just know that it's not overly strong. It's not going to be something like a Philosophes by Diptyque or Purple Fig by Wilhelm Perfumery. It's not going to be one of those types of fragrances, but you are going to get a good amount of fig in this fragrance. So it opens up a little fruity and there's a touch of freshness in the opening. And when I was reading the advertisement or the narrative about the fragrance, it made an allusion to champagne. And so I can see there's a little bit of that bubbly fizziness in the opening. Maybe it's me just thinking about the grapefruit and the impact and effect that those citrus ingredients are having in this fragrance. But I definitely get a little bit of that going on in the opening in addition to that fruity and spicy combination. But very quickly, this fragrance evolves into a leather fragrance. And the leather that I get from this fragrance is strong. So if you are a fan of leather fragrances in general, and you want a leather fragrance that stands out from all other leathers on the market, and I'm talking about, of course, some of the Yves Saint Laurent leather offerings. I'm talking about Tuscan leather by Tom Ford. I'm talking about a number of different leather fragrances. This one is leathery, but on account of the spicy notes, I think it also veers a little bit into animalic territory. Now, it doesn't smell barnyardy, so that's a good thing because I have a very small tolerance, very low tolerance for those types of fragrances. But in the case of this fragrance, it just comes across smelling a bit aggressive, one of those rough and tumble, more experimental leather fragrances, which is not for the faint of heart, but I think a leather lover is really gonna fall in love with this fragrance. So if you are a fan of some of the darker, gothic, you know, slightly smoky wintertime types of leather fragrances, I think you're really going to enjoy this one. There's definitely this bad boy charisma about it that is really likable, but I think it's not going to be the typical bright, fresh, Ambroxan bomb that you're going to get with so many mass marketed designer fragrances. And so if there is a particular client that gravitates towards those types of fragrances, there's a very small likelihood that they will actually appreciate something like this, although I am a huge fan of this smell. And it's one that I do wear sparingly just because my wife is one of these people who likes to smell the brighter, fresher, more citrus dominant offerings on the market. But this one, when you want to feel like a bad boy, when you're in that sort of a mood, you want to wear something that is not lighthearted, something that is not soft and subtle and wimpy. If you want to wear something that has depth and boldness and charisma and virility, this is definitely that type of fragrance to wear. And the leather sticks around for such a long time. And it really is a fascinating leather accord that's used in here because, again, there's no such thing as a real leather in perfumes, but I can see the utilization of the cedar and some of the woodsy nuances in the base without making it smell like a forest or a lumberjack or anything like that. So they're used in a very tasteful amount and not to take away from the reality of the leather. And so there is a certain realness that is conveyed through the use of that leather accord that I think all of these smaller ingredients are sort of doing their part and contributing to it a little bit at a time. And I feel like the main picture, the bigger picture of this is quite a realistic leather, one that's spicy in nature, one that's woodsy, one that has a bit of a fruitful opening, pardon the pun, but I think it also dries down to something very elegant, something charismatic, something a little masculine, although I find all perfumes are unisex. But if you're used to wearing some soft, subtle, aldehydic, fruity, floral fragrances, this might be quite the deviation from that. But again, you know my philosophy when it comes to fragrances. I believe all fragrances are unisex, and so just take these recommendations with a grain of salt. That's all I have to say. If you are a fan of leather fragrances, there's a very strong likelihood that you will love this one. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. So first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, this is definitely a unique fragrance. I have not encountered any fragrance out there that smells quite the way that this one does. Even other fragrances that tout to have a leather base and that tend to be leather dominant rarely smell like this fragrance. And so you have the Pure Distance M's of the world, you have the Tuscan Leathers of the world, you have a lot of other commercial leather fragrances, but I have not encountered something that smells quite like this. And so I'm really impressed by the uniqueness and the originality of the formula. However, just bear in mind that if you are a consumer who is used to a lot of those mass marketed designer Ambroxan freshy fragrances, this is going to be a very strong deviation from that. In terms of the longevity, nuclear longevity, you are going to get 10 plus hours on your skin every time. Projection is fantastic for the first 3 hours of application. It is quite loud and boisterous and it will really pop off your skin. And it didn't start to sit closer to my skin, at least, until about that 6.5 hour mark, 6.5 to 7 hour mark, but it didn't completely disappear until about that 9 or 10 hour mark. So it lasts a very long time on the skin. In terms of the versatility, I think this one is fantastic for the colder weather. I think that if you are planning on wearing this one in the hotter weather, just make sure that for the majority of that day, you're going to be indoors in a climate controlled environment, because it will really pop off your skin and you are going to get noticed when you wear this. Even if you apply conservatively, if you do just a couple of sprays, you're still going to get noticed when you wear this fragrance. Like I said, I think it leans a little bit masculine, but my personal philosophy is that all fragrances are unisex. I just think this one leans traditionally masculine as far as what the populace would say. And I think that this one is probably better suited for somebody who's a little bit older and for somebody who is really into niche and indie fragrances and that has an appreciation for some of the more experimental and daring fragrances on the market. The presentation for this one is pretty simple, but I think that that also allows that to coincide with the price of the fragrance, which I think is within a affordable territory. So my final verdict on this fragrance is, I know we're in the middle of winter. If you are a fan of leather perfumes, you want to at the very least sample this fragrance, see if it's to your liking, you have an affinity for leathers, and you're thinking that based off of the way that I described it, this could be your next love. I would definitely recommend that you go out there and at the very least try to get a sample of this fragrance. I'm hoping it's to your liking, and I'm hoping you find a new love. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. That was my review of Rich Mess by Ryan Richmond. If you own or have tried this fragrance, please let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below. Also, please don't forget to subscribe. If you are new to this channel and you took something of value from this video, all you have to do is click on that red button in the corner. And of course, while you're at it, make sure to enable notifications by clicking on the bell. Thanks again for watching. I love you all, and we'll see you next time.